Okay, so for this next video, what we're going to do is we're going to go through a variety of different appendages you can add to your mask blank in order to make the different shapes that you want to have on your mask. Since the majority of you are going to be doing animal type features, the majority of what I'm going to show here is stuff that could be applicable to animals, people, and like sort of that sort of thing. The first thing that we'll start with is a nose form. So there's a variety of different kinds of noses you can make, and I just have like random material you might be able to find at your house. This is an old seltzer water box that we can use to start to make forms. And the important thing to remember as we're doing this is that they don't need to be perfect. We just need to give a little bit of support underneath what we're making so that when we put the paper mache over top of it, it's got something to hold it kind of in place. So I'm going to start by using this one, this blank here, and if I wanted to make kind of a very basic nose form, I could use this piece that already has a crease in it, cut it at an angle, like this, and glue it to my mask blank. So even something as simple as this will generate a nose type shape. Now that's a pretty long nose. You may not want to make it that long, but you can obviously trim it to different shapes to kind of give you what you need. So if you were going to do more of like a horse kind of face, you might start with a longer sheet that kind of comes out like this. So to do that, we're going to trim this. Trim this edge off. And for ease of seeing, and I think I'll flip it inside out here, but we'll start by building a form that kind of does that. And you can adjust the shape just by folding the board you're working on. Like maybe it kind of needs to taper a little bit more than I have it. So I fold it like this, and I fold it like this. And it gets a little bit of a taper to it. Pop some glue on one side. Some glue on the other side. Now you're saying to yourself, that does not look too much like a horse right now. And that's only because we haven't trimmed it yet. But we could then trim it up and kind of give ourselves a very general horse type shape. Okay? Again, you don't have to make it perfect, it just has to be in the neighborhood. Alright? Because once we get the paper mache on there, we can kind of make some adjustments to it. Like, so maybe this needs to slide down a little bit. Maybe I have to pull this off and reset it. It's not a big deal. This is a time to kind of experiment with the form based on what you have in front of you. I'm not worried about having you guys be so accurate with it that you know immediately from the very beginning what you're doing. Alright? But you're going to have to kind of figure out, to a certain extent, how you're going to make the shape that you need. Alright, so we're going to leave my horse form on here for the time being. Okay? Now, the horse may have his head go out a little bit more. But that's what I'm saying, really, is like put it on there and start to play with it and figure out what you want to do with it. Alright? Suppose we wanted to give a mask some big cheeks, or roof. One of the ways you can do that is simply by balling up some plastic or some paper and putting a little tape over it. So for like this one, give it some big cheeks, kind of make a mound with the bag, kind of tape over top of it. And then you can start to use the tape to kind of define the shape that you want. And all this can stay in there underneath your paper mache, because after we get the paper mache on there, it's all going to be like smooth. Paper mache will just go right over top of this and harden. So it really just needs to kind of hold stuff in place while you're getting the material on there. And if it's not smooth enough, you can just keep adding some extra layers of paper mache. So if I were going to make a big fat cheek on this side, put another bag over here, plumped up. Put another piece of tape over it. That's a little high, so I'll slide it down some. Get it where you want it. Tape it on there. The paper mache might not stick perfectly to the material underneath, but it'll stick to itself. So as it dries, it'll stick to the other layers that you're putting on, and it'll certainly stick to the cardboard. So like you could do this and kind of get yourself two big fat chubby cheeks here on your mask. Now it would be kind of silly to do that, but you know, if that's what you wanted to do, you can certainly do it. I'm going to tear my cheeks off and show you an antenna real quick. So suppose you wanted to do some sort of an alien that had an antenna. You don't have to do it this way, but an easy way to do it is with maybe some toilet paper tubes. So you can cut them down so they are open up like this, and then make a cone out of them by tightening them, tightening the roll at one end and making it more open at the other end. Do that, put a piece of tape on it, or staple it. Alright, cut it so it lands flat. And you can hot glue on, you can even hot glue that thing shut, you don't have to tape it, I guess. You can hot glue your antenna onto your helmet, onto your mask blank. Do this one. I'll try to hot glue this one rather than using the tape. Trim it a little bit so it sits flat. And again, even your trims don't have to be that neat. And then sort of eyeball where it goes here. Pop some glue on there. Wait for it to cool. Whoops. You want to have it well enough glued that you can put your paper mache on without any issue. I'm hurrying a little bit here so I don't bore you with the video. But there you have antennas. Alright? Think about this base as the thing that you're going to just mount everything to. So look at your drawing and go, alright, well what kind of thing do I need right here? Or what do I need down here? Or how's that all going to work? Suppose you wanted to put a mouth into this thing. The easy thing to do is to maybe just cut a hole. And you're going to be more careful doing your cutting than I am being right here. Maybe you might have to put a little extra glue in your cardboard mask blank to make sure that it stays nice and sturdy where you want it. You can put your mask in and have a mouth hole. Alright? That way when you're doing your paper mache, you can just wrap the paper mache into the hole and it'll have a paper mache edge to it. In that case, you may need to make the hole a little bit bigger because the paper mache is going to start to fill areas in. Even if you want to do something silly like put a big lip on it, it could be done. Let me get a longer piece here. By taking a folded piece, let's see here, make a mark. Gluing on a piece like that. Okay? Just by folding a piece over. All you're really doing is thinking about, alright, what kind of volume does it need to have? Does this part go out? Does this part go in? And then kind of start to build the forms that are going to allow you to make that happen. There's still going to be a lot of play in it as you move along with the paper mache, because we're going to put the paper mache over this whole thing. So even like these holes right in here from where the mask base got constructed will get covered up by the paper mache. So there's not really too much to worry about with that. If you really wanted to, you could put some extra pieces, thin pieces on there to kind of make it smoother and it would probably go a little faster, but even that's not totally necessary. Now, some of you are going to want your mask to kind of go back past the edge. So one of the things you could do is get a large piece of board that you can bend around the top of your mask. So I'm just going to cut this piece out real quick. Oops. this floppy piece of board here. I can roll it. Soften it up. And then I could make an extension for the back so that it kind of goes back and covers the top of my head. Like this. Alright, so if I glue that on, nice and aligned where I want it here. Some more glue on this side. Stretch it down. And now my mask goes around the side of my head like this. Okay? So, I want you guys to understand that I do not expect these to be super, super complicated masks that are going to look exactly like the animal or whatever it is. If you get it in the neighborhood, I'm going to be more than satisfied. And if little strange things happen that you're not expecting and I'm not expecting that make it kind of a fun and interesting mask, I'm cool with that too. I'm not going to get way bent out of shape if things don't look exactly like they look on the real animal. So there's a weird joint right here. I could glue on some extra board, just kind of smooth it out. Try not to get burned like I just did. You can see how I put that piece on, and now, as opposed to the other side where it's kind of flappy, it's now smoother. Okay? Some of you are going to want to do big ears, like if you're doing an elephant. They're pretty easy to do by just cutting a big ear out of cardboard and gluing it on. I'm showing you a variety of techniques here because I don't know, everybody's mask is going to be a little bit different, and I don't know which each specific person is going to necessarily need. So I'm showing you kind of the general idea about how you can do most of this stuff. And then we will tailor what you need for you. Where's my squirt knife? Alright. Let's see here. Put a big ear on my horse. Now my horse has a big ear. It's starting to be a funny looking horse. What else is on my list here? Head extension, antenna, ear. Fins. Fins are the same as ears basically. So if you wanted to do a fish fin like on the top of its head, you could just make a big flappy thing and glue it on the top. I bent the flange there so it would be easier to glue, and then if it's still flopping around a whole bunch, we can make a little piece in here to glue in that'll kind of hold everything in place. At least till you get the paper mache pretty far along. And anything that's kind of weird, you can just go back and trim. Like so I don't want, you can see the flap on the ear is right here and it's up past the head. Well, I don't want to see that, so I'll just come back in here and cut it out. now the ear has a better joint. Okay? So stuff like that. Just kind of make it and modify it as you're going along. And if it doesn't look like exactly like you're drawing, so be it. It doesn't matter that much. Okay? So I kind of like this big ear now that I have. I mean, I could even give this thing kind of really funny eyes, like eye holes, by just cutting these toilet paper tube and gluing them on like this. I gotta get his ear straightened out yet, but so I put a very temporary brace in there behind his ear so it wouldn't flap out anymore. See? So that's the kind of thing that you could put in for a little while till you get some of your paper mache on there, and then just pull out later in the process before you paper mache that particular area. So the mask blank was intended just to be the foundation for what everything gets built on. And then from there, you can kind of mix and match and do what you need to do. So like underneath here, you can see the underside of his nose, snout area is open. I would have to probably, to paper mache that well, put a little material in there to fill it out so that it becomes something I can wrap around, right? You can see how this gets to be a pretty silly mask in short order though. Kind of want to put the other big ear on so it turns into a thing. At any rate, that's sort of an overview of how we're going to make the rest of the mask blanks. If you are going to have questions regarding how to do your particular mask, and I'm going to handle those on a mask by mask basis, on a student by student basis. So we will figure out how to do this together for the most part. I'm just kind of giving you an overview of how to do it so that when you start the process, you kind of have some ideas about what you need to do. And you can get started without me, and then when you get stuck or you need help with something, you can say, Mr. Campbell, can you help me with this? And I will certainly come help you. It's going to be tricky, and it's going to require me to kind of pay attention to everybody individually and give you individualized instruction because they're all going to be a little bit different. But I think you'll get a lot out of it because you get to make it kind of however you want. And I hope that you find, as we're going along, you end up with some happy accidents where you're like, oh, I didn't really think about doing it that way. And then it doesn't really match the drawing, but it's kind of cooler. Even so, I don't mind that it doesn't match the drawing. And it kind of became its own thing. So it doesn't have to match the drawing specifically. And it has, I'm giving you space to allow it to become a new thing other than what's exactly on the drawing. We just want to use the drawings as a starting point to kind of see where it goes. You may find that your drawing is a lot more complicated than the thing you actually end up building. Or you may find the opposite, which is your drawing's pretty rudimentary and then your mask ends up being a lot more interesting. But be open to the kind of variation in the process, and we're just going to do it step by step, build it up, and we'll trim and we'll keep moving and making the thing out of cardboard. And then once we put the paper mache on, it's going to even out all of the kind of weirdness that happens. Like all the weird joints and stuff like that can kind of get taken care of and kind of cleaned up with the paper mache. Okay, thank you very much.